And welcome. No, welcome to Conversations at Elevation. One of your hosts, Jay. Um, Welcome back for episode 5. I guess this week is our OP coordinator, Garrett Genereux. Um, kind of tell us a little bit more about our guest, Clay.
Oh man, where do we start? Garrett is one of my favorite people in campus recreation that we work with. He's always got a smile on his face, especially with what all he's been going through over the last few months, which we'll get into in the interview, I'm sure. But overall, he's probably one of the happiest guys. He always has a smile on his face. Nothing that no challenges that come his way or ever seem too big or some that really overwhelms him that he's not going to be the same Garrett that's going to change him. So um, that's what I really like about him. He's also really good at his job, and he knows everything about the outdoors. It seems like he's done it all, seen a million faces, been a million places. Um,
That's a great quote.
yeah, I think of the great poet Bon Jovi said that once. Been around the world, seen a million faces, kissed a million babies. I don't know.
But still hasn't found what he's looking for?
Yeah, he hasn't found what he's looking for quite yet. But
Yes, yes.
yeah.
No, he's Garrett's saying he's like probably one of my favorite people on the planet, and he's when I started, I think he started a couple months before I did, and we just like hit it off. And he's probably been one of my favorite people that I've had the pleasure of working with, and I've worked with some really awesome people. So
Yeah, for sure.
without further ado, let's bring him in. All right, hey Garrett.
Hi, how's it going?
Not too bad. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Uh, I mean, it's really our pleasure. Like, we got a rock star here.
It is our pleasure to have Garrett Genereux.
That's it.
All right, Garrett. Yeah. Let's get into it. So Garrett, you are the coordinator of our outdoor programs at the University of Wyoming. Um, Obviously, outdoors is in that. So when did you start to become an outdoorsman, fall in love with being outside of a house? And then how has it grown since then to where you are now, and how do you hope it continues to grow?
Sure. Well, I grew up very lucky. My family was into camping and visiting national parks as a kid. I remember very distinctly in first grade, I ruined my perfect attendance record was ruined in first grade when the last few days of school, my family went on a very lengthy road trip all the way to California for my dad had some work meetings out there, but then concluding those, we went to Yosemite, Glacier, and Yellowstone on the drive back home over the course of almost a month. And so grew up doing those sorts of things, car camping, and then also hunting and fishing with my dad, especially. So I was really lucky to have grown up in a family like that. And then that enjoyment for the outdoors definitely grew and deepened during my undergraduate experience, where I was exposed to an indoor climbing facility and working at my undergraduate institution's outdoor leadership center, kind of a smaller version outdoor program, as well as being a student naturalist on campus. The institution I went to, St. John's University, a small liberal arts school in Minnesota, is located on an abbey. So there's an abbey on campus, and so the monks actually own the land, and it's 2,700 acres of land, not including the 7 lakes that make up campus in central Minnesota. And so there was a program on campus that provided environmental education to area schools, K through 12 programs. And so I really enjoyed environmental education as well as starting to broaden my outdoor education skills and knowledge. An aspect that really helped with that was my junior year. I participated in a National Outdoor Leadership School, Knowles, based here in Lander, Wyoming. And I did a full semester program down in Patagonia. where I got to sea kayak for just over 30 days and then be in the mountains for over 30 days as well. And that kindled my interest even further. And then following graduation, I just continued to build my skills, worked in only environmental education, outdoor education positions since then. And so I've had the opportunity to continue working on those skills professionally as well as on the personal level. And married an amazing woman who has encouraged and joined me in a lot of those adventures, trips, and activities. And yeah, so that's where I've come from. And then currently, I uh, enjoy living in the West now, and not the relatively flat state of Minnesota. And so can just get outside of town or be almost in town and do those activities. And so I have access to them very easily. And now that we have two daughters, I've been exposing them to the outdoors. My oldest daughter, Alma, has done a bit of rock climbing outside, and she has been to over 11 national parks already. And that definitely surpassed. I don't even know if I had been to a national park when I was 4 years old, and she's been to 11 since she's been born, and we'll continue adding to that over the future.
That's awesome. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but what's your journey through academia been in kind of your field?
Sure. So my degree at St. John's University is actually in natural science, which you can include biology, chemistry, math, um, and those sorts of hard sciences towards the major. I originally thought I was going to be an engineer and go and get my master's degree in engineering after completing some prerequisites after that. But really, it was my junior year, encouraged by my then girlfriend and now wife, Erin. I switched my jobs on campus and over to working at the Outdoor Leadership Center as well as the Arboretum, the environmental education piece. Did my NOLS course and stopped taking classes I did not enjoy and equated to poor grades, physics and math, and finished out my major with biology credits, which help support the environmental education piece, as well as completing an environmental science minor. And that is really my background in true academics. However, I have been able to participate in other programs that, while not necessarily for credit, have really built on my education to where I am now. So some of those things would include in 2016, I became a wilderness medicine instructor, went to an instructor course, training course over the course of 20 days, and now I'm able to instruct wilderness medicine courses. So wilderness first aid courses, wilderness advanced first aid, as well as the longer wilderness first responder course, and train people in wilderness medicine so that they can stay safe, whether they're outside personally or whether they're working professionally outside, taking people outside. And then another non-traditional educational experience I was able to do was just last year. I took the American Mountain Guides Association rock guide course, which is a 12-day program. And so currently I'm technically an apprentice rock guide. And that's, there's a track to becoming a certified American Mountain Guide Association rock guide that I would like to continue pursuing, but has pretty stringent prerequisites in working professionally in the field, taking people up different difficulties and lengths of climbs.
Nice, that's awesome. So where are some places that you've been throughout your life that have really like made an impact on you that like you'll always remember? And like where would you recommend people to travel there? And where would you recommend people to travel for if they've never really been outside of the city before? Like where would you recommend that you number one have to go to see like the beauty that is like our national parks or mountains?
Sure. So personally, um, I through my Knoll semester got to go to Chilean Patagonia down in the southern third of South America on the Chilean side. And then in 2014, when Aaron and I made the decision to move out of Minnesota, we actually spent 5 months in South America again. And so I've been really lucky to spend a total of almost half of a year in southern South America. And I think that one, it does take some resources to do that. And so I understand how lucky and privileged I am to have had those experiences. But they're really wild places that while they are getting more and more tourism down there, you can still find places that are relatively unexplored. Aaron and I attempted to climb a few mountains that had never been summited ever before, to our knowledge and research, but found out why that was. It was some pretty heinous bushwhacking over the course of 20 days. And, but it was a great learning experience. And so I think you can find experiences like that. And in addition to it being a cultural difference and trying to speak Spanish regularly, and then add to like the outdoor side of Spanish, which is a whole different vocabulary. And so it provides some really interesting challenges. So those experiences, my Knoll semester, and then my own personal traveling in South America, definitely will have a lasting impact. And I'm looking forward to hopefully making a third trip down that way over the next few years with our whole family. And then just some of the places I've been in the Western United States and British Columbia and Canada, just continue to be awe-inspiring and make me want to keep doing those activities. Here in Wyoming, I think that we have a wealth of outdoor places. If you have the means, obviously the Yellowstone ecosystem, including Yellowstone National Park and Grand Teton National Park, cannot be missed. For the wildlife opportunities, the geologic opportunities, the mountains, and just the sheer beauty of it, as well as all the different activities you can do, whether that's camping in one of the many campgrounds, day hiking, wildlife viewing from the road, backpacking, climbing, anything that you want to do. And then here locally, I think we're really lucky to have really cool things in both directions from town, whether it's the Snowies to the west, where we can get into an alpine setting just an hour away and have these beautiful alpine lakes, tundra, as well as forests, and so many moose and other really cool wildlife in that direction, as well as the geologic formations at Vitavu. If you're looking for a national park experience that's closer than Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks are, Rocky Mountain National Park down in Colorado is also a beautiful place that has an abundance of wildlife and mountains.
Yeah, I saw my first grizzly bear this past summer when we were driving through Yellowstone to go down to Grand Teton. So that was really awesome to see.
Cool.
I just saw my first moose. So
that's awesome.
You talking about the outdoors, and you kind of mentioned you were acknowledging the privilege that you've had to be able to access some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the outdoors historically, it's something that only white people do, or people who have access to money or the resources to do that. Why do you think that stigma is, and how can we at UW help change that stigma? And then I've got a follow up in terms of how, as a world, as a people, we can kind of make the outdoors a little more inclusive.
Sure. Well, I think that when you start with that stigma, we do have to look at the outdoors in a historical context and to realize that, one, the genocide and taking of the land that initially happened in this country, and then also to realize that even our public lands were segregated until the late 60s and 70s. And so people of color were not welcome there, or had to picnic at separate areas away from whites, as well as just the anecdotal stories of when slaves escaped and had people with weapons and dogs chasing them. They were running through forests. And so that generational history and trauma understandably carries forward. And so those places, those outdoor spaces can bring up historical trauma in certain people. And I think then part of that today, well, and historically, is that you have to have means to be able to access some of these places. The places that I just mentioned in Wyoming, you need a vehicle of some kind to get there. You have to be able to pay the $25 entrance fee, have to pay for the campsite or the lodging within the park. And so it takes money and time, where even to get up to Yellowstone or Grand Teton National Park, you could do it in a weekend, but that's not really going to do it justice. And so you need to be able to have time. And unfortunately, some people aren't able to take off of work to make that happen. And so it does take a lot of privilege to do that. And so traditionally, you're right, Jay, that it has been a white person thing, and that Black people don't do that. And I think one of the big things is that representation matters, whether it's women or people of color, that representation matters. I think that finally has been something that's being realized in the outdoor industry, and you see more people of color and women in magazine ads, articles, films that have been coming out lately of people recreating outside. And so that's definitely a start. But for me personally, I think that we have to be careful in terms of tokenizing folks and being really careful about that. In 2019, 72% of the student population here at the University of Wyoming were white. And does that mean that just over a quarter of the staff at the outdoor program were of color or a minority? Unfortunately not. And so there is a lot of work to do in continuing to attract minorities to participate in things outdoors. And that does start with representation. But we need to be careful not to just have somebody of color just to be that person. And so it has to be really thoughtful and careful and engaging with those populations and the RSOs here on campus and the offices on campus that represent and serve those populations. And so we're continuing to build campus partnerships and work with those entities to build relationships and hopefully attract more and more students of color and minority status to the outdoors and to be able to participate safely and to make those outdoor places feel safe and accessible to them. But it can't be something done overnight as much as we want it to be.
In my time here and seeing kind of the work that you do with the Native American Student Center and their NASI program, and exposing them to the hikes out at Vidavoo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
State Park.
In Kirkgowdy. I think like the stuff that you all do with that is just a small step in the right direction. I think that it's empowered and it's really impactful to their student experience, because it may be something that they don't have experience with prior.
Definitely. And to be frank, we can't just be like, all right, we're doing a hike just for Black people, but our staff, who are all white, are going to be the one to lead it. That just doesn't sit well with anybody and isn't necessarily going to be the safest way and make people feel comfortable. So we have to be really, like I said, we just have to be really thoughtful about how we build those relationships and how we engage those populations and to build progress and build momentum.
So like as a collective whole, as a people, what can we do in terms of professionals or brothers, sisters, friends, fathers, mothers, help to do to make the outdoors more inclusive and break some of those stigmas within our own little groups?
I think that without being excessive, just be welcoming when you see people who don't look like you outside, whether that's a smile. I don't think, when I say excessive, I think going up to somebody like Jay, if I saw you outside and was like, hey, where are you going today? How can I help you? There are people of color and minorities who are way better at climbing or backpacking and other things that I personally do outside than I am. All right. So we can't just assume that every person of color or minority that we see outside is a complete novice or like their first time outside, but just be friendly to them. All right. And one thing that I never had thought about before, but when shortly after I graduated, back in the day, I was guiding sea kayaking trips in the Apostle Islands on Lake Superior. And I was working with a co-instructor who is a person of color, and he had brought up an idea before that I never thought about, that when he worked professionally with certain demographics and certain groups and people who are underserved, he'll actually not wear his $300 rain jacket. He'll pack like a pair of gym shorts and basketball sneakers so that he looks like the people that he's working with, the students that he's working with. And that is something that I had never thought about before, is that to make it look like it's way more accessible. And it is. Just because somebody's out hiking in jeans and not super fancy hiking pants that they bought for $80 at REI doesn't mean that that person doesn't belong outside just like you do. We say the outdoors doesn't discriminate and the outdoors is for all, but that isn't always necessarily true. And so, like I said, making people feel safe and welcome without being excessive, and being completely accepting of how they're getting outside. If they're wearing cotton doesn't kill. It's fine. Just because they're not wearing the same fancy, expensive hiking clothes that you are, that doesn't matter. They're out there and they're enjoying it too.
Yeah, for sure. I follow I think he's a travel blogger on TikTok he's a bigger black guy that, like myself, like a big guy. And he went to Yellowstone and he was like, this is what I have for hiking. This is what is the best. And he had all the REI and stuff from outdoors. And he was like, or if you're just going to be on a day hike and it's a nice day out, he has a cotton blend, long sleeve t-shirt, jeans, or a different style of sweatpants that kind of wicks away stuff. And he had boots or Nikes on. He's like, you do not need to have all this stuff. Obviously this is the stuff, but he's just this is what you do not need to go to REI and spend hundreds of dollars. You just need to have a normal stuff that makes you feel comfortable, because if you're uncomfortable, then that's also going to slant your views on being outside. Whereas you can hike, if you're on a day hike and the weather's great and it's not a super challenging hike, just go in what is most comfortable to you. And then later on, if you really start falling in love with it, then you can go get the top of the line stuff. So he's trying to destigmatize what we're talking about here, destigmatizing traveling to different places and being outdoors. And I think it's really, really awesome, because he makes it, and how he talks about it is you don't have to be a 25-year pro at hiking in the mountains to be able to do it. And so I think he's it just again goes back to seeing people like you doing it makes it more reasonable, not reasonable, but you're more interested and apt to go do it. So I think he's, and what you're saying is super important to remember.
If somebody is carrying their snacks and water bottles in a plastic grocery bag and not in some fancy backpack, who cares? Stop staring at them just because the way they recreate looks a little bit different than the way you recreate. They're still recreating is the point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. So, you don't have to get into it, but we know as like being coworkers with you that you're going through some health stuff. If you would like to get into it, you can. That is totally up to you. But so once you beat your health problems that you're going through right now, because Jerry and I both know you will, your attitude's too good to not beat it and exceed afterwards. But what is like the first thing that you really want to go do that is around Laramie that you can like that students can go do, like that you are really looking forward to being able to do again once you kick this health stuff out of the way?
Well, I have a lot to be grateful for. So back in March, I found out I had a brain tumor and that it was in the initial stages of being malignant and cancerous. And so I've had a few surgeries, several due to complications, for fun, I guess. And then was able to start cancer treatment at the end of August through September, and just started it, or just wrapped up the first bit of that included radiation and chemo. And then we'll start some chemo-only treatment later this month. But like I said, I have a lot to be grateful for in that even though I've had complications, which included my skull that they removed being infected when they put it back on my head. And then so for a while, I just didn't have a skull here. And now I have a synthetic piece of plastic keeping me whole. So that was really one of the times that I was not able to do the things I wanted, even though I felt well enough to. And I've handled treatment pretty well. And so there hasn't been a lot of barriers to me still doing what I want to do. So I still have gone out rock climbing. I still have gone mountain biking. I think more what's holding me back right now is that there's also the pandemic and I'm immunocompromised. And so as much as I want to, I really shouldn't get on a plane and go fly somewhere to go do certain activities. But I live in Laramie, and there's those opportunities right outside or within an hour of where we live. And so I've still gotten to do the things that I enjoy. But looking forward to maybe a trip to California to do some rock climbing this spring and beyond.
Go back to Yosemite.
Yep.
I think that's the next national park that I want to visit.
Oh, it's beautiful. My two favorite national parks by far are Yosemite and Zion. Just these two completely different rock types, but these amazing valleys of just soaring walls that have been carved by different geologic processes that are just stunning to look at and fun to climb, of course. But it's been my kind of a dream since this whole thing started that I would like 3D print my tumor, which I do have the measurements of it, and then climb to the top, climb El Cap, which I am lucky and have a friend who has been up it about 15 times now, and would definitely be able to get to the top with him, and then get to the top and then just like 3D printed in a relatively fragile material and then just like crush it and of course pick up all the pieces to leave no trace. But just to have fun and make a little statement that nothing can.
If there was ever a statement that said, "Oh, this is hi, I'm Garrett, and this is who I am," that screams it.
Yeah, 100%.
You can't chuck it off the top of a 3,000-foot wall, though, in the event that it hits other climbers or people at the bottom. So it would have to stay at the top.
Obviously, we have some programming. You've done some really great virtual programming in your job, and just kind of like you to share what your favorite programming that you've done during all this has been, and what's some programming that you're looking forward to promoting going forward.
Sure. So we have done a variety of instructional programs from fly tying, bike maintenance. We did an anchor building one that was fairly popular, and even way back in May, did a crevasse rescue clinic virtually, which had a lot of moving parts. But I think some of my favorite programming has been the film showings that we've done. That typically we have, excuse me, 200 to 500 people in the education building auditorium, and during those film showings in person, people are cheering during certain parts of the film. Um, but we showed a film last spring called Pretty Strong that featured women climbing. And then we've had a variety of films that we have shown through August into September. And those have been my favorite because of they were still bringing community together. And so we've had up to just over 100 people, and then some of the films haven't gone quite as well or weren't as interesting, and only a handful, 20 people on the film, but we're still there together in this moment watching it, and the chat might be active. Or some of the really neat ones have included a question and answer session with the filmmakers afterwards, and seeing the interest of the filmmakers engaging with our audience through those questions has been really neat. Almost like we were in person.
It's been really awesome to watch those movies and see just the beauty of the outdoors and what everyone else is doing and filming. So I think that wraps up Jay and I's question. What we like to do at the end of each of these episodes is have our guest leave our viewers and everything with a little nugget of advice or wisdom, or just a simple saying or whatever you got for us. So if you want to do that, and then we'll let you go, man. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I think one thing, I'll share two things quickly here, is that adversity is growth. And I've tried to look at my personal situation as well as the pandemic as an opportunity to learn. And professionally, I've had to learn how to engage our patrons and participants virtually and still accomplish those goals, as well as adjust to working from home and just pushing forward. So when you're able to, and again, it involves a certain amount of privilege to be able to do that, but when you're faced with adversity that you have the means to handle, it's growth, and have that growth mindset of how can I learn more about myself or learn more about my environment through this challenge. And related to that, the word that is behind my head on this little pennant banner is sisu, which is a Finnish word. My paternal grandmother is Finnish, and I think about some of the hardships that she's faced, and sisu means kind of that point where you go past surviving adversity or stoicism. And so trying to look at that in the lens of brain cancer or the pandemic, and just continuing on, that you can't just give up. We all have to keep moving forward and moving forward together.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Garrett. It means the world to us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been great to kind of hear about your journey. Obviously, we hear it and just kind of talking to you every day, but to be able to share that a little bit and for you to trust us to kind of share some of that stuff, we really appreciate it. We're looking forward to having you back in the office.
Oh, yeah.
Can't wait to have you back at Half Acre full time.
Yeah, I can't wait either. And hopefully be more open too in Half Acre. But we'll get there. Keep moving forward.
Fingers crossed. So, well, awesome again. Thank you for joining us this week on Conversations at Elevation. It's episode 5 with Garrett Genereux. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you found it impactful and meaningful and you took something from it. And as always, stay well, be well. We'll see you next time.